All right, everybody, what's going on? My name is Scott Garber. We're back in the saddle today with another fun podcast. Got my co-pilot Andrew back in the saddle. He's officially down here in St. Petersburg, Florida. So the madness has come together. And Bharath, please don't butcher me or kill me if I butchered your name, but welcome to the show, my friend. We're going to be talking all things mergers, acquisitions, investing through sports. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Yes, it's Bharath Rao. Thank you so much, Scott, for the introduction. Hello to everybody from Bangalore, India. Absolute pleasant weather here in Bangalore. Cool 24 degrees Celsius. So welcome all. Looking forward to having a quick and fun chat with both you and Andrew.
Well, you just had to throw the weather in there before we got going, didn't you? You just like to pour salt in
Yeah.
your open wound. We're here in Florida where it's still 91 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning, but here nor there. Let's go ahead. Let's just jump into it. Give us a little insight to who you are, what you've built, why you're building it, and then we'll start to go into the weeds of everything.
And my name is Bharath Rao. I've been in the sports industry for close to 2 decades right now. Initially worked as a cricket coach for various cricketers who are IPL team captains of various teams, and then moved on to manage the Formula One driver Naren Karthikeyan, who is the fastest Indian. He's probably one of the few Indians who has ever participated in Formula One for the Hispania racing team, and then went on to manage MS Dhoni, the Indian cricketer, who actually was on the Forbes list of one of the richest athletes. And I've been building the BASport company for the last now 8 years. Been working on the brand endorsement side, worked with several cricketers across India, as well as sponsorship with various sports teams. And for the past couple of years, we have got into disinvestment, mergers and acquisitions, raising capital for sports and sports related funds. So that is what we do. We are working with various leagues across the world, and we intend to also work with more such leagues. So that is what we do. Yeah.
And what are you seeing? Like, give us an example of some. I know before everyone hopped on, you were talking about an NFL deal you're working on, but walk us through, a typical transaction or what you're seeing or doing.
Let's say a particular IPL team is looking to disinvest a minority stake, so they reach out to us, and we basically start with the deal flow. We usually sign NDAs, and we then reach out to various funds, not just in India but globally, whoever might be interested, because cricket, as you are aware, is a growing sport. And we intend to take it further down the line, and we see cricket growing bigger and bigger in the coming few years and decades. So we typically reach out to these funds, and then we exchange few calls, and then comes exchanging of finances. That means the balance sheets of these teams or the leagues, and what exactly the investor expects in the future. We do some forecasting for them, both from a subjective sense and an objective sense. Like, for example, a new media cycle that might open up, like you must have seen what happened with NBA. It has grown to 77 billion in the next cycle of 7 years. So it has doubled basically in terms of media rights. So that would increase the valuation of the team on the top line side, and if they could manage the bottom line with you could say player salaries and wages, then of course it could go to the next level.
And then from we'll call it a monetary perspective, how are these funds looking to get returns? Like, what's their strategy as they're deploying capital into these NBA teams or now soon NFL, IPL teams? What's their timeline? How are they looking at it? What's their strategy?
So there are various funds that we work with. Like for example, I could give an example of a deal that has already probably happened with CVC. They had taken one of the IPL teams. They were in a negative for few years or 3 years, but then they flipped it around and they have sold a majority stake. Uh, some funds that we work with are looking at 5 to 10 year horizons, and some are looking at more from a business perspective and growing of communities and further enhancing their business interests. So it's not necessarily from just a funds perspective. There are business houses which look at sports from a pure community driven activity.
Let me ask you this, right? Sort of, looking at the and seeing the through the lens of Indian cricket, right, which is the mecca of it all. And when you look at like emerging leagues and teams, sort of twofold question here. What are you seeing as emerging sports over in India? And then how do you evaluate like cricket emerging in the US from an investment standpoint?
There are several leagues happening in India with rapid urbanization and the number of sports that are picking up. For example, paddle, which is a famous sport in the US, has made its inroads into India, and one of the clients has invested money in paddle from a pure growth perspective. From an investment perspective, yes, one is the growth potential, and I think from a pure urban disposable income is where the growth potential is the highest, rather than just the, let's say, TV reach or perspective, which is a traditional sports perspective. Like for example, paddle, you could easily say that the number of people playing that sport is higher than the number of people that are watching it as of today.
Yep.
So that is one aspect. The second question from a US perspective, I'm sure you're aware that Olympics 2026, we have or rather 28.
28.
Summer. 28, summer LA 28. We will have cricket as one of its sports which is introduced, and hence the interest from various folks, especially uh, the NRI population of India, who are CEOs of major corporations, the big four, the big tech companies, who are already stakeholders of Major League Cricket. And from that perspective, it's a growing sport, considering it's just a 2 week or a 3 week event, unlike most of US sports, which are probably 40-50 weeks.
Super cool insights there. No, I appreciate that, and it's always neat. I think sometimes we get sucked into a vacuum seeing it from this lens. It's always exciting to hear about how you guys are evaluating things. I'm going to stay on the emerging league side here. I see my man Harag came in, and we're watching a lot of things start to spin off of Formula One, right? And so I'm curious, like when you guys look at investing or representing, how do you think about the media and the 360 approach around what these leagues are providing, whether that's drive to survive, to the actual core, to the team itself, to representing the driver? Where do you guys like to come into the ecosystem from an investment lens?
From an investment lens, we don't look at it very part by part. We look at it very holistically. The more revenue drivers, the better all the time. Like for example, content pieces and things which are more D2C, as they say, the risk is lot lesser. So we look at it from a pure holistic point of view. And Formula One is definitely one of the things that we intend to work with. We had a couple of opportunities, but I think we'll probably get back to it in a couple of months' time. And I see that Formula One is one of the most exciting sports, especially after CVC sold it. I think it has grown strength to strength because of the US population, especially US population, I would say.
I want to go now a little bit tangential. You're seeing a lot more groups come into sports from a capital lens and seeing interest in, and especially on the team or the league side, which is where you deal with a lot. What are you seeing from some of those groups more on the tech side? Obviously, a lot of people in here that listen to these that are living in that more downstream world of more capital, but can it flow to all the technologies being built around it? What are you seeing or hearing from those groups as they might go buy an NBA team or obviously on the minority side or any of these other ones as they now start to look to sports more as a whole as an asset class?
Yes, I think they are assessing all the time, but most of the technologies are, you could say, from a pure uh, tech perspective, they are much more well educated, well informed because they get proposals from the who's who almost on a daily front. So, whoever is developing technology from a pure sports point of view has to not just think sports as a vertical, but has to have much more in-depth knowledge of sports and build technology from that perspective. I think they have to look at it like the way I think Mr. Jeff Bezos said, from a pure customer's point of view, whether they can build it backwards. That is where I would say might be a differentiator.
Or and you obviously worked in more of the cricket space before diving into this investing and working at this high level. Anything that you're seeing from I think you still work with and talk with a lot of athletes, anything you're seeing or ways that companies can engage with them that you see that works from your time there?
Yes, I think there are several new things that are happening in India, for example, where athletes are taking sweat equity instead of the let's say a brand endorsement fee for from a startup's perspective, where they see a potential of their, let's say, $1 million investment, uh, which can grow 5x, 10x in a course of 4 to 5 years, rather than the traditional, let's say, a payout of $1 million from these brands to them. So they would rather get sweat equity instead of the hard cash, which might result in further growth. So that is one way of looking at it, and also uh, the athlete brings his own community. Like for example, I'm sure everybody is aware of Cristiano Ronaldo's feat of a billion social media fans. So he himself is a media company from that perspective. So whatever he advertises or invests in would grow at least from his 1 billion, from a funnel down at least to 100 million kind of number that they can look at. So yeah.
And then any advice for obviously you talk to a lot of these capital providers, any advice for founders or anyone looking to raise capital, things you've seen work? Because obviously the fundamentals are the same between selling a 10% minority stake or selling 10% minority position in an early stage company. Any tactics, and you deal with a lot of these high level people that are dealing with billions of dollars that you've seen, like how they move that can be applied downstream?
Uh, I think it's pure scalability if you consider the difference between a sports team and, let's say, a smaller technology company which can look at let's say divesting their 10% for an angel or a VC round. I think it's pure scalability and sustainability that they will look at, whereas the billionaires, it's a much more risk-free investment in a sports team because you already have a set community, you have a set top line, or at least let's say 70-80% is coming with media rights. Whereas let's say in the startup world, there is nothing like that unless you have some contracts if it's B2B or something. So I necessarily work primarily with the PE folks and the billionaires who are investing in sports. I mean, I wouldn't want to give any advice to guys because I myself I'm always learning. Yeah.
And then from India, how do you see that as a market or for any companies looking to get into it? You know, are there any insights you have for how to approach that space or enter it, or areas to be cautious of?
India is a very interesting market. It can be considered top down on one side, going the way, let's say, paddle club, for example, got into India, or few American sports. I had the pleasure of introducing EFLI, which was Allied Football League of India, almost a decade ago, which had few Hollywood celebrities as investors. Um, uh, I would suggest it to go partner with a well-established Indian conglomerate and go downwards, other than going bottom up. And
Got
of
it.
course, every sport is case to case, and every new industry, every industry is different. So it requires some amount of consulting before you get into the Indian market.
Got it. And then appreciate you hopping on today. We're gonna open up for questions here after this. What's website, socials, where can people learn more about what you do, LinkedIn, anything on your side?
I work with several folks where we sign NDAs and things like that. So we tend to keep everything. Of course, LinkedIn would be the best place because we tend to give some information out, but always keep everything pretty low on disclosures because of the nature of it. Because we are working on several things from IPL to NFL to NBA, also to Pro Kabaddi League in India, and also a few European football teams that we are working with, where we are looking at both disinvestment and 100% buyouts. So we would be giving out some information on LinkedIn, yeah, for sure.
I have one question for you before we open it up to the floor.
Yeah, sure.
As an entrepreneur, right, and as the asset class continues to open up, what's one piece of advice you would give to, folks in our community or listeners that are raising capital or that are building in the sports world? What's one piece of advice or nugget that's worked for you that you would give to the audience?
I think one piece of advice that has always worked well is look at it from a pure 10-year horizon, rather than let's say I would like to make so much money in a month or a year, because you could do more from a perspective of a 52-week into 10 years rather than looking at just, let's say, 2 months, 1 month, 1 year, which is a shorter horizon. And especially if the products that you sell, for example, what we do as investments is in the 50 mil, 100 million, or a billion, 1.5 billion, these sort of ranges. So we necessarily understand that it has to be one, long-term thinking, two, resilience, and three, an adapt strategy of approaching the right kind of investors and the right kind of clients for the set products. So these are the three small things that from my experience, what has worked for me would be one or two or three things that I would say. Yeah,
I love it. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So
absolutely. It's longer than a marathon.
Oh, I know. Don't tell
Yeah,
me.
you need to take rest, you need to recharge, and again get back onto playing on the field. So it's a 10-year horizon. So you can't even compare it with a marathon where it's just, yeah.
It's no T20 cricket match. We're playing longer than that, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been super insightful. We got time, we got about 10 minutes. We got a hard stop here at 9:30 this morning. So we'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments? Feel free to raise your virtual hand or just come off mute, and we'll roll through a couple. Any takers? Any takers? Going once.
Hi. Hi Bharat. Hi Andrew. Hi everyone. This is Madhukar here. I mean, I'm from Pune. So firstly, good to be connected. Pune is a city in India, just for everyone else.
Yeah.
One question that I had, say if someone is starting off and is at a concept level, so what would your do's and don'ts would be for to raise funding, And what should the valuation, I mean, how can one prepare for the valuation, especially when someone is at a concept level?
Okay, I think a very interesting and difficult question, Madhukar, that you have asked. I think one way of looking at it is if you have done your competitive analysis. So let's say there are concepts which are similar to yours. So A, from that perspective, how do you see them valuing themselves vis-a-vis you valuing it? That is one aspect for it. Like I could give you an example, but without taking names. So there is a US defense company that has valued themselves at 12.5 billion, whereas the Indian counterpart, which has similar technology, is only valuing it at $30 million.
Right.
Right. So it is a question of buying power from US, and it's a question of buying power from India. So it's literally translates to around 80x. So that is one way of looking at it, and of course, it's case to case basis, and it's hardcore forecasting that would give you the valuation.
That's super good insight.
Thank
there.
you.
And I think, being able to look at historicals in the market, and then find folks that have done it before, right? I think mentorship in this game is everything. So make sure you guys connect, whether it's LinkedIn in the community. We'll make sure that, we sort of bridge that gap there just as a resource. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts before we wrap this one up? All right, cool. I think we'll all get a few minutes back in our day today. Appreciate everybody taking a few minutes to come in and listen. We'll be posting this in the community. We'll be posting it to socials. Andrew, take us home, man. Any other questions or thoughts on your side?
Thanks for coming on, B. It was awesome. And yeah, hopefully one day one of us will be selling a team through you.
Absolutely, Andrew. I look forward to assisting you and the entire ProFluence community with whatever insights and knowledge that I can give.
Thank you so much, brother. Have a great evening over there. We'll talk soon, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.